Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical update here by H Weather Forecast. And we have huge updates, especially for hurricane or tropical lovers here. We now have the NHC has now issued a 50% chance for potential development here in the northeastern Bahamas here. And we have major updates on the models, we have major updates on the radar, the winds, vorticity, wind shear, all of that. We have major updates compared to last night or yesterday's video in the evening. If you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and hit the post notification icon so you get notified as soon as I post a video, whether it's tropics, monthly outlook, or more. We are actually 2 subscribers away from 2,280, so please hit that big subscribe button. I really want to get to 2,300 by the end of the week. I think we can possibly do that. Also, share the channel or video to anybody that you know that really loves daily weather forecasts, especially tropics, as I'll be focusing a lot on the tropics and hurricane season this summer, especially since it could be very, very active. But without further ado, let's get in this video. So here we have the NHS, or National Hurricane Center. We finally have now a potential area of development here. This is where, of course, this is the area where it possibly will develop. Most likely, I think it will develop most likely right here in the bottom of this circle. But here we have our disturbance 1, so 50% chance for cyclonic formation in 5 days, which is actually a huge jump there. Usually they start really at 30%. Or 40, but that was a huge jump to 50% chance. Wow. But of course, the formation is not going to be within the next 48 hours. Of course, it's going to be most likely forming this potential subtropical storm, maybe even at most a tropical storm Arthur. That'll be a 0% chance for forming the next 48 hours. But within the next 5 days, that's where we have that 50% chance, which is a medium. Once it gets past a 70%, then it's considered a high. So I have a medium chance for potential development for a either subtropical storm at most or subtropical storm Arthur. This is our area of focus here for development in this area. So it seems like it will be going off the coast, not making landfall, but it'll get very close and possibly bring in effect for the Outer Banks areas and the far coastal areas of North Carolina. So here you see, this is where we have potential area development. It is in most likely really warm waters here, but the only issue is where it's going to be tracking later once it forms and moves north. We're going to have very, very cold waters next to the Carolinas, and if not cold average, which the average temperatures in these areas in May aren't the warmest. Of course, here we have 80s and 90s here, and here we have some 60s and 70s. So as you see, that's the only issue. This is really possibly the only reason why we are going to be seeing this as very weak, and with the wind shear, we could be seeing very little wind shear, but very strong wind shear, just splitting the storm. So it's going to be really lopsided, very disorganized, but really at most, at tops, tropical storm force winds. But where we have our potential area development, we have very warm water, so very unlikely that this will warm up. But it might just most likely just stay the same. So that's really the only issue there. As long as it doesn't go right here, which it probably won't, it'll probably just go right here, or someone else even should go here. As long as it doesn't really go like right here, then it's really good, because it would just fall apart a lot there. This is where you possibly see our area track. This is our area track right here. So that's what we're looking at there. Now let's go ahead and check out the GFS here on the radar, or the precipitation. So here we do have, of course, within the next 72 hours by 15th. So like I said, the 14th, or the late 14th, the 15th is where we have our area of potential really development. So of course that is in 3 days. So that is where we possibly have really strong and a lot of precipitation throughout much of the Bahamas. We're gonna be seeing a huge blob of precipitation, and then we do have a defined low pressure system right here to the northeast of the Bahamas, which is possibly where we have that's like in the southern part of our circle. For our area of development, as you can tell, that's kind of in the southern part where I did point out. That's where it's possibly going to form at 1,009 millibars. You can already see it kind of looks like a cyclonic system or tropical system. You can kind of see the outer bands already. You can see these bands circling around, and you hear the low right there. So it definitely looks like a very well-defined system once it forms. And then as it does move to the north, it does become a bit more one-sided, which is where you have all the precipitation on one side. So on the other side of the low pressure system, we don't have any precipitation whatsoever. We have some powerful winds, but we have all the precipitation to the west to the west of this low pressure system, and you're about to see why later in the video. And then as you see by later Monday the 18th, here it is at 1,005 millibars. But look, all this precipitation is on the west side of this low pressure system. None of it is to the east. None of it's to the east. So we're gonna be seeing the worst of it really to the north and to the west of the low pressure system. And it will bring some rain for Bermuda, but other than that, it won't really make any. It won't. In other words, it won't make landfall in any area, whether it's any islands in the Atlantic or main landfall in the U.S. As we now look at the CMC model here, the CMC model is finally agreeing with the GFS again. It does actually show the low pressure system though forming to the north. Maybe northwest of the Bahamas, a tad, just right, directly north of the Bahamas instead of right here. It's like right here. So yesterday they showed it right here. So that's a bit more progress, as this is around 72 hours out from forming to 78 hours. So it still definitely needs we need these models to agree. Like the GFS shows, the CMC is showing this one-sided system with all the precipitation to the west of the low pressure system, and the CMC does make it getting very awfully close to North Carolina. It's gonna skim the islands, and it's definitely bringing a lot of rain to the Outer Banks if the CMC is correct, which I highly doubt, as it's been really off this whole time, and then it will possibly even bring impacts for Virginia, but I highly doubt the CMC is going to be correct. And then as we now check out the icon model, just go ahead and check this out. It does show the same thing, but as you can tell, it's going all the way up into the it does really show, basically the icon and GFS are really forming here. Let's go ahead and check out the European for vorticity. And of course, the European shows it's becoming look at all this vorticity, cyclonic rotation. Definitely looks like the European's definitely showing it the same thing. The European kind of shows it not forming really here, more like directly to the northwest there. And this looks very, very organized, and that possibly get very close to Bermuda, but definitely seems like the Europeans showing this becoming a massive, possibly tropical storm here. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead take a look at the 10-meter winds here. So these are not winds all the way high in the atmosphere. This is basically right here on the surface. So here we have, of course, very strong gusty winds out here to the northern Bahamas, where you can possibly see it to around 30 to 34 knots there. And then when we have that low pressure system form, and possibly have, of course, all that moisture and all of that there, then we have this low pressure system with these very strong winds, of course, to the outer parts of the band. So this, we're going to be seeing that rotation, that vorticity there, with around 25 to around 33 knots. And then as we get later into Sunday, May 17th, this is where you could possibly have that tropical storm force winds, possibly climbing up to 40 knots here. So definitely possibly, of course, seeing some lower side tropical storm force winds, and then this does kind of course, fall apart there into, or it kind of just seems to strengthen the low pressure system at 993 millibars, and then it does move actually to the northeast. It's actually very interesting. See, that's actually very interesting, where it's actually going to be strengthening, and then potentially even have stronger wind gusts. So this could actually be something really long lasting, actually weaken, and then have possibly 46 plus knots there. Now let's go ahead and check out all the other stuff. So if we look exactly if it's going to be dry or very wet or a lot of moisture, there's going to be a ton of moisture right here into the north and to the northeast of the Bahamas, which is where we've seen that system forming right there in the middle of all that moisture. This is exactly why we're going to be seeing this one-sided system, because look, to the east of this low pressure system, we have extremely dry air, but to the west, we have extremely moist air, and that's exactly why we are going to be seeing that all the precipitation to the left or to the west of that low pressure system. And as it does rotate, then the heaviest of the rain will now move this way. So that's exactly why we're going to be seeing a ton of dry air mixing in with this moist air. So it's going to be really unstable here. This system very unorganized, and then as it does move, it does strengthen a lot more into the northern Atlantic, because it has a lot more moisture now out here in the very dry areas to the south. So this is exactly why that thing seems to be one-sided. Now as we get to the vorticity here, the GFS, of course, we have that vorticity signature, or a signature of a lot of cyclonic rotation to the Bahamas there. And then as we now move more to the, of course, move more into now May 17th, where we possibly have our strongest wind gusts. So we have a ton of vorticity there. So definitely seeing a lot of rotation. And then this seems to possibly take a like kind of rotation or circular like rotation, circular like not signature rotations, figure like. So it does seem to be, of course, cyclonic. And definitely seeing the stronger wind gusts with these isobars a lot closer. Then it seems to weaken by the 19th and then strengthen once again by the 20th. So this could very well redeem itself this as it does move into the northern Atlantic. The only thing is we have cooler waters. Now the wind shear, of course, this is where it's very interesting. Right when this low pressure system forms, we're going to have very little wind shear surrounding it. It's like just perfect for this scenario. And here you see all the wind shear moving to the north and then moving to the south. So perfect scenario right here to have a tropical system to form perfectly, and we have all the moisture. So really, even if we were in April and we still have these warm waters here, this could very well form like at any point, because it's perfect scenario. Very little shear to the. Oh, this is also another reason why it is going to be one-sided. Look at this. We have very little wind shear to the west of these low pressure system. To the east, we have wind shear. We don't have very little wind shear, but we'll see a decent amount of wind shear there. And then as it does move to the this does move in the 19th, here we have that low pressure system at 1,001 millibars. There's in generally in this whole area right here, we're seeing very little wind shear. Even this area is not too much wind shear, but once you get in these colors, that's when you see a ton of wind shear. And that's when it will take down and really make these storms fall apart a lot more. And also it seems like the wind shear does take over in the northern Atlantic, so that's also another reason why it's not a huge problem or a huge concern of that redeeming itself there. And I actually want to go ahead and check out now the precipitation on this. Let me go ahead and check out now the total cumulative precipitation. And as you can kind of tell where it's going to go on the track based on the precipitation. So it does seem this is where we'll possibly have this disturbance right here. This will kind of see where it will possibly become, of course, an invest, and then it does seem to form right here, of course, to the north. So here is basically where X marks the spot where it is possibly going to form, and then this is the track basically right here. This is just the cone of where it's going to go right there. So that's basically just a showing exactly basically the cone of this. As you see, we're going to be seeing a ton of rain from the Bahama Islands. 4 to 6 inches are expected, which is a ton, especially within a really 36-hour time period. That is a ton of rain. CMC, of course, the CMC is going to be showing this rain a lot more closer to the Florida coast. And of course, it seems like the CMC is going to be really bringing a lot of rain now for the Big Island as well. And it seems to bring a lot more rain for the North Carolina coast. Does possibly bring up to an inch of rain there for the far coastal areas, and then of course the GFS has actually just reloaded, and then Icon does show a decent amount of rain as well, but that's going to be for the general ocean. We'll be seeing 7 to 8 inches of rain. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, of course, and if we have any major new updates, I will post another video. But bye, guys.